Hey guys, welcome back to another Table Talk Thursday. If you hear any background noise, it's just because I was cleaning my house all morning and I'm on my last load of laundry, so sorry about that. We're going back to the mental health discussion, and I wanted to set it up in more of a way of the history of famous families who have people who had family members who suffered from mental health issues and their reaction. There's only 3 of them I'm going to use, and I kind of chose these 3 because they're very important. But before I forget to mention, this Sunday at 2 o'clock, I'm going to be uploading a new series called Axu's Reading Corner, where I'll start reviewing books that I personally have enjoyed reading, or books that I absolutely hated, and I'll explain why they're good or bad. So, getting back to the table talk. When it comes to mental health and history, there's a lot of different things that come into play. And the first I'm going to be talking about is Elliot Roosevelt. It is Teddy Roosevelt's younger brother. Now, he's born February 28th, 1860. He will die August 24th, 1884. Sorry, I couldn't read my own handwriting for a second. He is the father of Eleanor Roosevelt. Remember, Eleanor Roosevelt marries Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who is our president during World War II, and he jumps out of a window and kills himself. Now, when I'm talking about mental health, this was a very public issue that Teddy had to come across because his brother had a lot of issues. He became an alcoholic. It seems like he suffered from depression along with the alcoholism, and it seemed to have started with the death of his mother and his sister-in-law. Within a 12-hour period, they both died on February 14th, 1884. Now, he ends up in this downward spiral to the point where Teddy has to have him declared insane and has to put him in a mental institution. And the public sentiment towards it was, what's going on? This is a very prominent family. And Teddy didn't hide the fact. He actually was very public about it and tried to help his brother out. And it seems like there was a lot of grief within this. And for this man to have lost his mother, her name was Martha Roosevelt, and his sister-in-law, Alice Roosevelt, within a 12-hour span, I think that kind of broke him in a way. And Teddy, how he dealt with his grief between his mother and his first wife's death was he went out west. So you don't see the grieving process there, but Elliot took it really hard. He even says the house is cursed, that this is horrible, and he continues to talk about it a lot. But because he just got to the end of his rope, and he jumps out the window. Now, Teddy actually did try and get his brother help. He tried to get him into an institution. He really tried, and there's a book that I'm listening to called The Bully Pulpit. I highly suggest if you're interested in anything like U.S. political history, definitely read that book. Teddy did try and get him help, but his brother just refused, and there wasn't anything Teddy could do. And in the end, Teddy even acknowledges that his brother wasn't who he once was, and he wished he could have helped him more, but there wasn't anything they could do back then because mental illness wasn't very well understood in the early 1900s. So because of this, you have Teddy publicly finding his brother to try to save his brother, and in the end he couldn't. And it kind of ate at Teddy in a way, but he always was the type of person to try to put a good spin on things, and his brother's death allowed him to empathize with people who also had family members who had some sort of mental illness. He never hid it, and it's something very unique when it comes to early mental health issues. The second person I'm going to talk about is Rosemary Kennedy. Now, she was born September 13th, 1918, and dies January 7th, 2005. She is the oldest daughter of the Kennedy family, sister to JFK and RFK. Now, she had a low IQ, and a lot of this you have to understand. The Kennedy family didn't talk about Rosemary's mental illness, so there's not a lot of records about it. And what we do have is very limited because the Kennedys are very private about Rosemary. And it seems like they described her symptoms as having discipline issues, being that she had violent mood swings, reckless behavior, and she was rebellious. So it kind of makes me think that she may have been bipolar ADHD, even though some historians have suggested that she also had schizophrenia. But I haven't read anything that really leans towards that, in my opinion. Now, she was actually lobotomized at 23, and this lobotomy left her brain, incapacitated. She couldn't care for herself. She lost everything. She went from this young, vivacious 23-year-old to a potato because it destroyed her brain. And the family did this because they didn't want to deal with it, and they've never acknowledged it. And it's one of those things where you look at and you're like, why are you not helping your relative? In the end, did you hurt her? But it does inspire some of the Kennedy siblings to take up the mantle of mental health reform and stuff like that, and that's why you see JFK, RFK, and I can't remember which sister it was. One of those sisters worked with the Special Olympics, and it's all because I think they felt guilty. And if you look at it, it's one of those situations where you're like, this could have been prevented. This all could have been prevented, and it hurts just looking at it because you see this wonderful woman who, yes, she did rebel against her parents, yes, she did need a lot more help than her other siblings, but at the same time, she didn't deserve that. If you want to know more about Rosemary Kennedy, look into the books Rosemary, the Hidden Kennedy Daughter by Caitlin Lawrence, or The Missing Kennedy, Rosemary Kennedy and the Secret Burden of Four Women by Elizabeth. I cannot say her last name, so I'm very glad I screenshotted both books. And again, the family didn't recognize or talk about it. It's like the family's deep, dark secret that they wanted nobody to ever know about. And with that in mind, it kind of makes it look like they didn't get the fact that she wasn't bad, she wasn't evil, she was just sick and she needed help, but they didn't want people to know that she needed that help. Now, the last person I'm going to talk about, this is a recent case. This happened in 2013. His name is August Gus Dredd. He's the son of Craig Dredd, a Democratic nominee for Attorney General of Virginia in 2005 and Governor of Virginia in 2009. Now, this is a very sad case because his father was actually trying desperately to get him help. He tried in Virginia to check him into a hospital to try to get him mental health, and he kept checking himself out. Austin did. So Craig finally went to West Virginia, who you needed to be evaluated before you were released, and tried to get his son in there, but there wasn't enough beds. So he had to wait a day before he could check his son in, and by then it was too late. Now, he wasn't diagnosed until he was 21 with bipolar disorder, and he was a brilliant student. He was a brilliant young man who had a lot ahead of him. He was attending the College of William and Mary, but left when issues started to arise. Now, his father tried desperately to get him help, and there's so many accounts. I'm going to link you to a few of the stories that I found, trying to get his son help, trying to help his son succeed. But on November 19, 2013, he attacks his father, stabs his father in the head and chest multiple times before taking a shotgun and ending his own life. And this is like a very sad story because there was so much that this young man could have achieved, but it was cut short because he wasn't able to get the help he needed. He needed the help, even though he kept refusing it. He did need it. But his father says, I could either be lost in my grief or I could choose to take action. I chose to take action. Now, his father is an advocate for mental health reform, trying to improve the mental health system, and trying to get changes, and he uses his son's story in that aspect, and he publicly recognizes what actually happened. And it's something a lot of families wouldn't take heed of. I mean, this is a kid who was 24 years old, same age as I am now, who ended up just losing himself because he had a mental health disorder that he couldn't get the help, or he didn't want to admit it because of the stigma. And that's what a lot of families face today is you have a lot of people who are stigmatized. If they come out with a mental health disorder, if they say, oh, I have bipolar, or I have ADHD, or I'm dyslexic, or I have schizophrenia, or anything like that, you have that instantaneous recognition of a stigma that there's something wrong with you, that you need to be fixed, that there's medications, that you need help. But sometimes you have to help yourself first. For me, for ADHD, I, of course, have been on medicine because I'm severely ADHD. Now I'm off it, and I'm learning to cope with not taking medicine, by drinking coffee and stuff like that. But you have to learn your own tricks. And when it comes to people learning their own tricks, it's sometimes hard because who do you turn to when you have ADHD or when you have depression or when you're bipolar? It's not like you can advertise it online without fear of somebody saying something to you or making a rude comment or belittling you, because it's so stigmatized. And I think that's the biggest problem with mental health, is we have this stigma about it that we don't want to accept the other. And it hurts a lot of times because these people are trying their hardest to get better, to get to the next level, but they can't, because they're told you have a mental health disorder, you're going to be a horrible person, and you need to be medicated or put in a hospital. But with that stigma, a lot of these people will not accept the help. And that's what's heartbreaking about the system, and how we need to reform it probably is we need to reevaluate what mental health is and take away that stigma and empower the patient to say, look, I may have this disorder, but it doesn't define me. And because it doesn't define me, I am willing to accept the help and willing to get the help, and I need this help. So I think those are the 3 cases I really wanted to talk about and focus on, because we really need to reevaluate what we see as mental health. So next time, I'm actually going to do some interviews. I'm going to probably go through some of my old psychology textbooks, and we'll go from there. And there's probably going to be 2 more mental health, and then we'll get into the gun issue. So I'll see you next Thursday, guys. Glad you enjoyed Table Talk. Bye, guys.